and that is starting hopefully now. But officially, welcome to this wonderful evening event with our guest speaker, Angie Kim, author of the award-winning and critically acclaimed Miracle Creek, also a short story, fiction and nonfiction author. And we are here to talk to you and ask you some questions. And we are delighted you came to join us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm in Fairfax County, and I'm an avid Fairfax County public library user, so I'm really excited to do this.
Wonderful. Uh, I wanted to start off not actually about books as much as your short fiction and nonfiction writing. You recently wrote for the Washington Post. I included the link in the chat or the email I sent. And you wrote about the current situation we have in America, which is very devastating about its violence towards Asian Americans, the AAPI community. And I just want to touch upon that. And luckily, this week we've got some good news with the bill that was just passed against hate crimes. And I wanted to know if you had any further reflections upon that, if that made you feel more hopeful, or if you're still feeling like this is something people are not taking as seriously as they should.
I mean, it's hard to know because when I think the Atlanta shooting occurred, and that was sort of the culmination of a year of escalating violence, I think it got people's attention, and the bill is great. And but I do feel like people have, and I think it's also been really great that May is AAPI Heritage Month. So I have been inundated with lots and lots of people, reading my book, reading my articles and short fiction and short essays and things like that. And so it's been very active from that perspective. But I do feel like people I think people think that it's sort of under control, and it's really not. And so it's really it's one of these invisible things. I was talking to a judge out in California who's a classmate of mine from college, who's been one of the leaders, very outspoken about who is Asian American and who is very outspoken about these issues. And we were just talking, just the two of us, just trying to sort of vent to each other and let out our feelings. And one of the things that he said that really got to me was how universal it is that our Asian American friends, just like we, have all felt like we have experienced so much racism, but we haven't really spoken up about it, because it doesn't seem like it's the kind of thing that we should really talk about, because we don't want to make trouble, and we want to we want to be grateful as immigrants to this wonderful community and this wonderful country. And I think we have been sort of taught through our culture not to make trouble, whatever that means, to be grateful. And he and I were talking about it, and I was thinking, it's almost like, especially because I'm an immigrant, it's like I'm a guest. And you know how, like, when you're a guest in someone's home, even if some things are a little bit tiny wrong, you're not supposed to speak up. So, if you're a guest and it's a little bit cold, like, oh, it's fine. If you're a guest in someone's, house, and they have you over for dinner and you don't love what they made, of course you're not going to say anything because you want to be polite. And as someone who feels like a guest, you don't want to complain, and you don't want to speak up. And I think that's at the root of so much of the silence that has, been going on through our community. And it's really hard. The same way that it was hard for women to speak up, on Me Too issues. I think it's sort of similar to that in that it's hard to speak up about this and say, people pay attention, because
Mhm.
that feels rude and that's not, it goes against what we were taught to do. So that article, thank you so much for mentioning it, which sort of calls out my white friends, is really kind of uncomfortable. It was very uncomfortable for me to write. And it was very uncomfortable for me to publicize and, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Well, I thought I'm glad you did because found it really insightful for me to read and to be able to share with people and review my own actions and how
Yeah.
I'm not, yeah, how I might be able to move past things that I shouldn't be able to, like as easily as um, others.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
uh, that's also something I was thinking about with your writing in general. You've got so many issues that you deal with that are sensitive and can be difficult with not only different cultural issues and racism issues, but your book Miracle Creek has a lot about people with disabilities and raising children with disabilities and being a mother in that position. And it's just wonderful how fearless your writing is. But it made me want to ask you: is there anything that you feel like you were hesitant to write, or that you found difficult to write?
I mean, a lot of Miracle Creek was difficult to write. A lot of what I write is difficult to write. Miracle Creek, I think, it being my first novel, was actually in a strange way not as difficult to write, only because I didn't think that it was actually going to be a book. In fact, I had note up on my writing nook that said in all caps, "This is not a novel." I thought, it's not going to be a novel. I mean, in the sense that it was a novel, obviously, I was writing it, but I thought, people always tell you that the first book that you attempt to write is usually the kind of thing that you finish, and then it's good that you wrote it because it teaches you the process, but then it's not great, so then you put it away in a drawer and then you forget about it.
Right.
I sort of thought that it was going to be like that for me. I thought, it's my first attempt at a novel. I'll use this to figure out it what a novel is and how it's different from short fiction, which is I had published before. And so I sort of thought that this was something that I was doing with no expectations. Um, and in that way, it was very freeing because I could put anything in there without
Mhm.
any fear, because I was just like, whatever, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter what I put in here because it's never going to become a novel. And so I think in that way it was good that it was my first novel, because I felt free to put in a lot of things in there that are sort of like the kind of shameful thoughts that people have but are taught not to say, and you really shouldn't say unless you want people to think that you're a complete monster, and, and definitely not a good mother. And so a lot of those thoughts are in there. And then once it was done, it was much easier to sort of say, you know what? I think this needs to be said. And to the extent that people are willing to read it and actually publish it, and an agent represent me and things like that, then I might as well go ahead with it. So I think it was good from that sense. And now, like, I'm finding the second novel much, much harder to write because there are expectations and I know it will be published, in some form.
Oh, sure. And as a longtime reader, I've gotten to a point with fiction where I'll pick up a book and I'll start reading and I'll think, I've read this before. But with yours, it was all completely new. And I feel like that fearlessness is part of it, that the characters just felt so real and human and just so, their emotional lives were just so fully realized, because that it is things that you think of or you may not want to say, but it's part of what you're thinking and what you're going through. And it's great gain to read something that brings that to life.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
And with your book that you're writing right now, any I've read that you were a slow writer, and you said you're finding it so hard. So can you talk a little bit about your writing process and anything you've
Sure.
learned?
Yeah. So my writing process is essentially that I ignore everything in my life and focus on one chapter at a time. And for example, I just got done with a chapter on Tuesday evening, like really late, like at midnight. And so yesterday, I basically slept for half the day, catching up on all the sleep that I'd been missing, finishing up that chapter. And then I've been doing bills for the last couple of days because I haven't really been doing that. And so that's sort of my process. I wish I had a more rational process that's more like, I write every day from 8 to 12 and then I exercise or whatever. But unfortunately, I've tried that and it's just never worked for me. So my writing process is I write one chapter or one scene at a time, and I just sort of write the scene and polish it to the point where I feel like it's good and it's what I want. And then I send it out to my writing group. And then while I'm waiting for their feedback, I catch up on life. And which is what I'm doing right now. And then my writing group meets this Saturday. And then after that, I will get back to work on the next chapter. So that's sort of the way that that things work. And as far as the next novel is concerned, it does take place in Fairfax County. It takes place in a park, well, in a house, but it's in it's called Happiness Quotient, and it's about a 13-year-old non-speaking boy who has Angelman syndrome and is, can't speak and has motor difficulties and things like that. And he goes on a walk at the beginning of the novel with his father, who stayed home. And they go to a park that is from the descriptions and things, it's very similar to Great Falls Park, which is, close to me. And sort of a cross between Great Falls Park and the park at the end of Seneca Road in Great Falls, that's sort of like right next to the Trump golf course in Algonquian Park and things like that. And in any case, and so they go on a walk during the pandemic in June of 2020, and only the boy returns home. And because he is non-speaking, he can't tell the authorities or the family what happened to the father. And so the rest of the family obviously is devastated and trying to make light of this, and also tries to work with him to help him find his voice and cope with, how to move on when there are no easy answers. And it is a biracial family, so there's that element to it. The mom is a Korean immigrant, and the dad is white, and the kids are biracial. And it's narrated by one person, by this brilliant, really funny 20-year-old woman who is the older sister of the boy and, the daughter of the missing father.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. That's it sounds like a very intriguing book, as well as um, just going off of what Miracle Creek was. I can just tell it's going to be very fleshed out and well-rounded.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's in a way, for people who have read Miracle Creek, it's sort of the other side of the coin, in the sense that, Miracle Creek really focused on the parents of special needs kids. And this is really about the siblings and the kids themselves. So Yeah.
Wonderful. Is there going to be another kind of courtroom drama aspect to it?
No, I don't think so. So I don't love doing the same, like I don't love sticking to similar things. I mean, I'm sure the themes are going to be very similar because I'm obsessed with certain ideas and I can't seem to let them go. But yeah, I don't I like, as an example for my life, I being a writer is my fifth career. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I keep on changing things around a lot. And so I think it'll be the same with respect to writing. So this is, I mean, there are certain elements that are the same. There is a mystery, obviously. There's, a missing person. So we're trying to figure out what happened to the father. Um, so there is that, but I don't think that there is going to be a courtroom element. Although, I mean, I'm about halfway through writing, so there isn't anything yet. But not to say that something could prop. I don't know, because I don't write in a planned way. I write very much, sort of organically, chapter by chapter. So I don't think so, but there will, I think, be um there is a lawyer that I really love from Miracle Creek, a woman,
Mm-hmm. Shannon?
Shannon,
Yeah.
and I think she is going to be called in by the family to help them with, deal with the police and things like that. So I think there will be some recurring characters and, just making cameos, really,
That's
or at least
awesome.
talk about them. Yeah, I love when a community sort of takes on its own life. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like,
Yeah, and you have the little characters popping up in different books. And you're like, oh,
yeah,
it's, yeah. I
yeah,
do too.
yeah. You're not supposed to do that because for adaptations for Hollywood, apparently it's a huge no-no because yeah, when somebody buys a book, a work, they're buying the characters, like they're buying the story and they're buying the rights to the characters. So if you have the character show up in a future work, then it makes it harder for my agents to sell that book, to a Hollywood studio or whatever. So it's a little complicated, but I just love the concept that happens.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I hadn't considered that aspect of it. But
Yeah, me neither, until my agents kind of scolded me for it. So,
we'll have to name her Cannon instead of Shannon.
yeah, well, yeah, or something. I don't know. We'll have to do something. We'll have to get the lawyers involved and figure it out. Yeah.
How was the publishing journey for you as this your debut novel? Wow.
It's been really amazing. I can't believe it was 2019 when the book came out, and the paperback came out last year, and it's being translated into, I think, 20 languages. And so I think maybe like 7 have come out already, and then the rest are, in sort of translation, in the midst of translation and things like that. And the pandemic has really, like made things a little bit less predictable. But it's been amazing in so many ways. In 2019, I still did so many, amazing book events, like, tours, and going to really wonderful book festivals. So that was really wonderful because I love connecting with other writers and I love connecting with booksellers and librarians. In fact, my first book tour event was actually pre-publication for ALA, for American Library Association's the meeting in Seattle. And so in 2018, I think, or maybe it was early 2019. And it was so wonderful. It was for Library Reads panel and with some other debut authors. And it was just wonderful getting to meet librarians, because I think librarians are such avid, readers, and of course, as well as just passionate advocates.
Mhm.
They're just so wonderful. So it was really like just such an amazing time. And then 2020 is when everything shut down, and I had all these events lined up, in person for during the pandemic, but then because my paperback came out in April of 2020, but of course everything got completely shut down. But then I actually got to do, I think I did like 2 events a day, like virtually. And so I got to meet a lot of librarians and booksellers that I wouldn't have otherwise, because this was during the beginning, the days in the very beginning of the pandemic when there wasn't the Zoom fatigue that there probably is now, that my friends are kind of complaining about a little bit, if they have books coming out now.
Yeah.
But back then it was just so new. So we were all figuring it out together, and that we were using different platforms. And so it's been really a really fun ride. And I'm really looking forward to the second book too. I'm with a different publisher, and I think it's just going to be so fun for me to sort of experience what, how the publishers are different, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm really excited.
Awesome. I want to take a pause so I'm not hogging the conversation. Does anybody else have a question for Angie? If not, I do have my pre-prepared notes.
I'm having my evening drink.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing the gorgeous weather outside. I'm loving it. Yeah.
It's nice. I prefer this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing I read that surprised me is that you said you would read the Goodreads reviews. And I don't know a lot of authors who do. So do you still do that, or did you find that valuable?
I do. So I do. I did in the very beginning. And it was, in the beginning, it's like with your first baby or something, you just want to soak it all up, and you just want everything. And so I just wanted to experience everything. And of course there were some, hurtful, 1-star, awful, brutal reviews and things, but even those, I think because there were so many people who were supportive, it was easy for me to just sort of read even the not great reviews and not be too hurt by them, because there were just so many people who were sending me so many nice notes. And so, and then what I would do with the sort of less favorable reviews is I sort of put on my like analyst hat. I used to be a management consultant, and I sort of tried to figure out, like, is there something about the 1-star reviews? Like, are they more men versus women, or are they more, Asian versus not, or, whatever it is, so that I could try to learn from them. And there were, like, one of the things that actually really was a common theme in the people that didn't enjoy my book as much was that they just got confused with so many characters, because there were a lot of characters. And so for the paperback, I asked my editor if we could put in a cast of characters in the beginning, because I myself have a huge problem with names. I am just very bad with names. Like, I mean, even in real life, I'm horrible. And so I love having, like, and when I read books, I'm horrible. Even if there are only like 3 characters, I completely forget. And so I find myself, like, I use as a bookmark for myself for each book that I read a list of the characters' names and like who they are. And then that's like becomes my bookmark for the book. And so I asked my editor if we could do that for my paperback. And so, like, my paperback, see here, this is the paperback. And now there is a cast of characters.
Yeah. And the ebook too has that, because
yeah, and the ebook has that too. Exactly. Yeah. The ebook, just like, they update the same time. And so I just thought, and then I have heard so many people say, either in events to me or in the Goodreads like reviews that are really, really good reviews, saying how much they love that. So I feel like it was actually really helpful from that perspective. But the reason that I love the Goodreads reviews is because there are some reviews that I just love, that I saved and I printed because they're from people. There's one that's from a person who has autism herself. There's another from the parent, a mom of someone who has autism. There's one from an immigrant. There's one from a granddaughter of an immigrant. They all sort of said either like how much they really appreciated reading about this because it made them feel less alone because they had felt that themselves, or for like the people who were like the granddaughter or the person who has autism herself, they said how it helped them to understand their mother better,
Mhm.
things like that. And so that made me feel like, you know what, I love that we have that. And I love that they can communicate with me, and I love that I have those sentiments that I can print out and and keep in a folder, so that when I have the moments when I'm like, I don't know why I do this, why am I writing, then I can sort of look through that and be like, okay, this is why I write, because it has this kind of impact on people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing that draws us as librarians and all of us here today too, is that connection to that that you can't get from anything else really. The like even movies and everything, that but reading the words that somebody else, I feel like you get that sense of, I know this person knows me in a way that not everybody it can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. And do you believe in writer's block? So, are you one of the people who struggle with that, or do you think it sounds like you're very committed to a schedule or to trying to meet?
No, I mean I do in the sense. I mean, I have many. It's less writer's block for me and more procrastination. I'm a horrific procrastinator, or very good procrastinator, I should say. I'm really good at it. I do it all the time.
Yeah.
And so I have many books on how to overcome procrastination. So it's less writer's block and just more just um not procrastinating and actually doing the work, because sometimes it can be painful.
Mhm.
But I don't really believe in being blocked. I think I think there are problems. I think you can get scared to write something emotionally. And for me, I guess maybe it's a semantic thing, but I call it more procrastination rather than a writer's block. And a lot of the times for me, the way out of it is just um you know just rewriting and saying like, why am I what is it that I'm afraid of, what is it that I don't want to be writing right now, and why am I procrastinating instead of actually writing. And I find that when I do that, sometimes that helps to break it. So I think for me, like just writing anything, just to sort of almost psychoanalyze myself a little bit helps get through that. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. I get the sense of that I read that you're a philosophy major and that so it's clear that you got and talking about like going through the Goodreads reviews from a very analytical place. I can get
Yeah.
the sense that that's a big part of just how you interpret things and kind of take uh, and that's great. And uh,
Yeah. And Laurel, do you write yourself? Are you a writer also? I find that a lot of librarians are.
or yeah, I did a lot more when I was younger, especially. That was one of my goals. I grew up in a family that my mom was a librarian, so I was introduced to books from a very young age. No, and uh, loved reading so much because of that connection that you get. And I was like, this is the only way people are gonna I can really interact with the world is through books and writing. And so I wanted to become a writer. And then I never got past the fear part of it, which is
Yeah.
why I really admire you so much, is that I just get so worried about what people are going to say that it prohibits me from actually wanting to put anything out.
Absolutely. I think that's why it's critical when you're drafting to just think this is not going to go anywhere,
Yeah.
right? For the sake of it. And then you can always read and decide, you know what, either I'm not going to try to publish this or I'm going to take this out,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it also sounds like you get a lot of feedback from fellow writers, which I'm sure also just kind of
Oh
helps.
yeah, that helps so much. I don't know what I could have done without my writing group. Yeah, for sure.
How did you get in touch with your writing group? Where did you guys all
Oh,
get together?
so we met at probably most of us at the Writer Center in Bethesda. They also have they also have an annex in Arlington as well. But I think that's one of the wonderful regional writing centers, in the country, and with wonderful writing classes. And so I took personal essay classes and also classes on writing fiction, on short fiction.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that's how I got started. And I met some people from there. And I think we started about, yeah, maybe like 11 years, no, maybe 10 years ago or so. And then and we've been sort of, and there are 7 of us around the, Maryland, DC, Virginia area. I think I may be the only person from Virginia, mostly DC and Maryland. And then and we take turns hosting, and we meet monthly, and it's just really wonderful, and we exchange work.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a really wonderful way to sort of support each other, but also get a lot of confidence and emotional support as well. So yeah.
Um, to go back to, so you to spoke of writing. Do you find writing fiction or nonfiction to be easier?
I think fiction is much easier to write. I feel like nonfiction for me, there's more to worry about with, like, what are people gonna say? Are people gonna, think this is me? Like, and is this actually accurate? Like, am I remembering the scene correctly?
Mhm.
Did so and so actually say this in this way? That type of thing. So I think in that way it's less freeing. And also I feel like when I give ideas that, especially ideas that are more controversial or complex, to fictional characters, it makes it easier for me to tease them out.
Mhm.
It's, I think it's using the idea that I can use plot that, to sort of advance a certain idea or theme,
Mhm.
rather than just saying it out loud, I think sometimes can be really effective and can say much more clearly than just saying in a didactic way a particular idea. And so I like that element of it. And I like that I can sort of step away from sort of the heady discussion and have the characters engage in funny conversation, for example, like if I feel like that's what's warranted. So I feel like it just gives me more flexibility, and also that's sort of how my mind works. I think there are some people who really like sticking to what happened and what actually is, and there are some people like me who really like being able to sort of say what they wish would have happened or could have happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so I find that more freeing. Yeah.
Right.
Do
Yeah.
you,
When
do you like reading nonfiction better or fiction better?
I used to be a big fiction writer, but as I grew up, I'm almost exclusively nonfiction now. I do really, yeah. I never thought it would be that way, but it switched over to the the trueness of the um, nonfiction is what gets me now. It's like I can't believe this actually happened, or wow, it's crazy that people can discover this about the world, or
Yeah,
there's amazing that all these variety of animals, people, culture, whatever it is, exists out there. I've gotten a lot more into.
definitely.
And with nonfiction, it is if you're writing kind of general nonfiction, it's different than writing a more targeted piece like your Washington Post article, which
Right.
is open to argument from people who want to just take it in the political front, or on make it part of a narrative of like of it's. But what's your response been that you've gotten from people? It's mostly been positive, or have you gotten some like pulled into arguments that you feel like you've been misinterpreted in?
I think so what was great about the I knew that it might be controversial, and so my editor at the Washington Post was really wonderful about um the comments I think were moderated and things like that. And then some of the comments that weren't really flammable, but still, not generous. I had some friends who, without my knowing about it, I think went through the comments and sort of engaged in that kind of heated debate that I didn't want to. And so I didn't even know about it until much later. What was funny was I actually didn't really want to write this article, just because it was really painful. And then when I did write it, and the Washington Post reached out, and so then I ended up writing it. And when I did, it came at a weird time because it ended up being um published when I was away on a writing retreat, where I had meant to just sort of be cut off from the
Unplug.
world. And this was important enough that I didn't do that, and I still sort of looked, but I was still in that mindset a little bit, and so I didn't look at the comments and the emails and things like that until later. And by that time, because so many of my wonderful supportive friends had sort of engaged already on my behalf, I didn't need to do that, and I could sort of like look through it with a more dispassionate lens. And so it was good, but I did get lots and lots of great feedback, so that was really heartening and wonderful, and just so much support from not only my friends, but it just reached a lot of people, and so it was really wonderful. And the not wonderful responses were sort of taken care of.
Right. Yeah. And you'd mentioned in the article itself about having the support on social media from other AAPI people who were going through what you are going through, or they're
Absolutely.
going through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you feel like social media is it's kind of the dual sword of it's got its ugly side, but it also has all these great positives to it? Do you think ultimately it's going to be beneficial to help keep the hashtags going, or keep the focus on racism and stopping Asian hate and all that? Or do you think?
I mean, absolutely. I think that the more visibility we can get on these issues, the better, because I think, as I said before, I think that there is this reticence that, comes from the sort of model minority myth and things like that. And so I think the more that we can get out in front of this issue, like there was a study done, I think last week, that was just so unbelievable to me, because it talked about um the visibility of this issue, and most white Americans have no idea that like Asians feel discriminated against or feel like there's racism that they've experienced. And so I think that there is a lot of this sort of, a lot of the preconceptions that we have to sort of combat. And I think the more that we can do to sort of raise the visibility of those issues, the better. So,
Yeah, 2020 really was a tipping point for a lot of discussion on racism in America,
oh, definitely.
but it does seem that this is different for people, and that's why, again, your article is so important to put out there, that it shouldn't be considered different.
Yeah.
Racism is not good regardless of whatever the minority is.
Yeah.
And uh, do you feel I, growing up, your works talk a lot about being a young immigrant and coming to America, and looking back on that and looking at now, do you feel like that young people are in a better position? I was reading that a lot of young Asians are getting more active and advocating for things because of this moment. And I wondered if you felt that the future is brighter for them. Say, I was a, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think so, but I mean, it's hard to tell because, you know, and it really, I think, depends on what area of the country you grow up in. Like in Fairfax County, my kids are here. And I think part of them feels like, but like there's so many Asians in my school. So, you know, like what is the big deal? On the other hand, even with that, there's just a lot of attitudes and slurs and things like that that are tolerated, such that they go to, you know, to one of them goes to Langley High School, that and you know, one just graduated, and so from the same school. And even that school, which, you know, I think the Asian population is really high in that school, there's a lot of attitudes and assumptions and prejudices that they're having to combat, the teachers and the, you know, and people like that. So it's really interesting, I think, that all of that sort of stuff is happening. And even in an area like ours, which you would think is so cosmopolitan and so not susceptible to that kind of thinking. So I think it's really interesting. And I'd love to, and I think that especially in the parts of the country where maybe, you know, there aren't as many Asians, I don't know what that would be like, because then on the one hand, you know, you're hearing more about it, but on the other hand, sometimes hearing about it when you're not close to someone can make you feel resentful of that issue being an issue, you know. So it's going to be so interesting to see what comes out of all of this. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely. I grew up in a very small town in northern Michigan,
Right.
and I'm a lesbian, and I can imagine the people there saying the same things that now that they would have said then, just because it is so small, so removed from things. But the thing that exists now is the access to cultural
Right.
media that didn't, and that has gotten a lot more progressive
Right.
and representing LGBT characters. Not great, but better.
Right.
And
Right.
that made me think of the last part of your article, which was talking about the ability to portray Asian characters, API characters, in a way that isn't stereotypical and can
Right.
perpetuate this myth of the meek or the obedient
Right.
person.
Absolutely. And, you know, I was in the novel that I'm working on now, the mother, who's, you know, like a middle-aged immigrant Korean woman, is very, you know, outspoken and articulate and sort of badass in many ways. And you don't really see that, you know? And so a friend of mine who's Asian, um, who's an Asian American immigrant, who's an author, who's a very well-known popular author, and we are very close, and we exchange pages and things like that. And she was so excited to see that, because she was like, this is not, you usually see women like that be more subservient and I had a character like that in Miracle Creek as well, the mother of the immigrant family who was silent, trying to be obedient, trying to sort of meet her family and culture's expectations. And she did have an arc and she changed by the end, but it was very short-lived. And to see a character who is sort of not following that trend and is very hard, it's not usual. And so I think it was really interesting to see her reaction, that was something that she longed for and that she craved.
Right. And do you feel that the publishing industry is getting better about accepting and publishing these
I mean,
more diverse
so
voices?
I have been really lucky in that I've had publishers and editors and an agent who are amazing about all of these issues and who crave these stories and who are so supportive. So I think I'm maybe have a slightly skewed view about all of this. But yeah, I feel very supported. So yeah, I'm really excited about that.
That's amazing. That's great.
It really is.
Excellent. Do other people have questions or comments for Angie?
I wanted to say how much I enjoyed Miracle Creek, and I'm really looking forward to the happiness quotient. And I have to tell you, I was reading Miracle Creek on the Washington Metro, and I missed my stop, Angie.
Oh, I love that.
I missed my stop.
I love that. I love the missing the stop is like, that is one of those things that is, like an author's dream when that happens. And I remember an agent texted me that or emailed me that once, and I was just like, oh, that just makes me so happy.
Yeah, I really did. But I love it, and I live right in Great Falls, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, you do? Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've definitely made a lot of fans with the Miracle Creek. I had what they call a book hangover with when it was over, where my head was still in the world and with the characters, and that's always a great sign of a good book.
I love the book. Yeah, but I really think the missing the metro stop is I have a friend I have a friend who lives in Bethesda who told me the same thing with when she was one of my early readers, and she told me that even with an early version that wasn't as good as the final version. So that made me happy.
You've got natural talent. Did you always want to write, or you started fairly late because you had
No,
5
I started
years?
really late. I started in my 40s. So yeah, I never wanted to be a writer. I thought writers were very strange people, and I understand why anybody would want to write, but now I do. So
Well, you're extremely talented.
thank you so much.
Any other questions or anything else that is on your mind that we can chat about while we've got you chatting with us?
I love that we have a Great Falls resident, because Great Falls Library is, somewhere I go all the time. So it's really wonderful to me. And because it's on my mind so much right now because of the whole setting of my next novel. So I'm really happy about that too.
I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. I haven't been to the park in a long time though. So I need to go back and visit. I'm in a hiking group that used to hike through there all the time. We'd park at Difficult Run, and then we would walk over. We would cross 193 in a very dangerous way.
Yeah.
And then we would go to the falls, and I haven't been in so long, so I'm kind of longing to go there.
Was it the Great Falls Friends and Neighbors group?
Oh yes, yes, with I'm not going to name names, but yes, with all of the usual suspects. Yes, for sure.
Yes, yes, I'm in that. So it's fun.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. I think my membership lapsed because I was just, when I'm in my like zone with, trying to finish the next chapter, I just sort of like let everything go. I used to be one of these people that had 0 unread emails in my inbox.
Mhm.
My kids, my teenage boys would have like 10,000 unread emails. And I'd be like, what is the, I mean, I would like die if I had something like that. And now I've become one of those people. I miss emails left and right. And then I just like forget things. It's just horrible. It's real. I've become a horrible person.
No.
My trick is I go and I mark as read, so I feel like I'm on top of things. But
Marking something as read is just takes so much work too. And then once you mark it as read, then you forget about it. So I actually have to mark stuff as unread. So I'll like maybe go back to it at some point. It's really, I need to figure out a better email management system, clearly.
well, I'm thinking we have to have a debut party when your next book comes out, or a publishing
Launch
party.
party, yeah, that would be
a launch party.
really
Thing.
fun. I would love that. Yeah, no, definitely. And my first, one of my first events was actually for Miracle Creek, and we did this before it even came out. Was for GFFN at Great Falls Library.
Awesome.
And we did it as a special preview, and we
Mm-hmm.
had Scrawl Books, which is a local independent bookstore, Reston that I love, and they came out and they sold books, and they got special permission from FSG, from my publisher, to sell the books. It was really wonderful. And so Great Falls Library was the site of like my first event. It was wonderful.
Well, we'll keep the tradition going.
Yeah, definitely. For sure.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this.
It's been wonderful joy talking to you. And like I said, you've made a lot of fans here. So we will try and schedule something else when book 2 comes out.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Sure.
You.
Hmm.